help if I had a microphone on. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Bennick?
Here.
Commissioner Hoyler? Commissioner Keating?
Here.
Commissioner Purvey?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Vice Chair Chapman?
Here.
Chair Summers?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
For which it stands.
Do we have any current events or reports, please?
Yes, Chairman, members of the Commission. A couple items. Next Wednesday, we have our original town site community chat from 6 to 8 at the Senior Center. Another item that was just approved by Council on Tuesday was to form a bond council. The bond council will consist of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Community Recreation Services committees. They'll be joined by, I believe, 2 members from the Dysart School District, as well as a member from the Chamber. And basically what this council is to basically look at if the city going out to formalize bond for public improvements. So there'll be a few meetings here and there, but I think it's actually a really good opportunity, so that was approved by council this past Tuesday. So I'm sure there's going to be some more notifications and so forth coming up.
Okay. Is that the whole commission you're saying, or just members?
Whole commission.
Good.
Whole commission.
Good.
And then if you saw the council meeting on Tuesday as well, it was announced Project Iris, which Iris USA. They'll be building about 300,000 square foot facility, 100 full-time jobs over in the Southwest Railplex. Next meeting, I'll come to you guys with the presentation, kind of introducing the project. Here's what it is. I have kind of a real rough rendering of a site plan, so we can start having those discussions with the committee.
Okay.
And that's it.
That sounds great. It sounds like we're going forward. This is the time for the call to the public. If there's anybody wishing to speak in the public on issues that are not on the agenda, this is the time to do so. Seeing none, we will go to the regular agenda. Flipping the page. Next item is consideration action on the February 5th, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes. Could we have a motion, please?
I move to approve.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes, 6 yes votes, 1 absence.
Okay. The next item is consideration and action on a site plan for Surprise Pet Club retail facility generally located on the southwestern corner of North Cotton Lane and West Greenway Road. And let me get my notes here. Before I ask you to do your presentation, I had some comments I'd like to make, and I think the rest of the commission are a little bit bothered about ending up with a packet with 2.5 pages of conditions, hard to wade through, and it makes it hard for us to review. It also sort of signifies to me that there's differences between the developer and staff on what is being recommended, and it's sort of being punted at the commission to ultimately sort it out. And even with 2.5 pages of conditions, there are several more I think that ought to be included for project approval. One of them, I fear, could make the project unfeasible. So there's some major issues to deal with here. So could we have the staff presentation?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Tonight I am presenting the Pet Club. Just to give you an idea where this is located, it is in the Sierra Montana subdivision. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. Right beside the Prasada, the Fries and Prasada. And the red dot is about where that is in the master site. Now this is the proposed master site for the whole program. A lot of it is conceptual. As you may know, the CVS pharmacy was built within the last year on the corner. And tonight we're talking about the Pet Club. The internal roads are put in, the newest road being the furthest south. And anybody that drives by can see all the landscape that was put in prior to any building. So it has matured very nicely. This is the site club, the Pet Club site plan. The building is about 16,000 square feet. We have landscape throughout. Now, this is required to have 15% landscape, but that does include the portion of around the whole development.
When you're saying the whole development, you're meaning more than just this site. You're talking about the rest of the full-on development. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm talking about along Cotton and along Greenway.
Okay, thank you.
Parking, including employee parking, and utilities, including trash, which we asked the applicant to bring forward away from the houses that are beyond the 20-foot planting area between the residential area. Now, you did bring up about the comments or the conditions, and one condition it was a little difficult to write. It was a little complicated, so forgive me if it didn't come across the way it did. So what I did is the applicant supplied me with this drawing here to give you an idea of what that's happening. And staff was concerned mostly with the lining up of the drive aisles. If you go back to the master site plan, you'll see that the main drive aisle up from Cotton does not line up with the parking, and it just makes it a tenuous little area to turn. So after a couple different revisions, we came up with a solid plan. So when you drive up there, you're going to have a stop sign, turn right, turn left. The parking is reduced a little bit, but in this code, it allows up to 30% of compact parking, which is 8 by 16. So that helped that parking a little bit as well, because this doesn't quite meet the parking calculations, but it does have a shared parking agreement with the rest of the development. And so this just illustrates how that movement will go through. Also a new little PowerPoint trick I learned. All right, just the master site program here, or the master site. Here you can see where I was talking about the lining up. So we did close that off right in through there. These are the elevations. It's modern southwest elevations that's setting the tone for the rest of the development. And the landscape plan. Low water use, trees in the parking lot as per the code. And just a reminder that this will be changed to turn out into that far lane to the north. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the conditions. And I'm here, and the applicant is here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I would normally ask the fellow commissioners to have their questions and comments, but I'd like to start first and see if I can frame some of the issues that I see with this project that are at least a bother to me. They may not be issues for the rest of the commission, but that's why we have 7 members and we have 7 votes. I'm bothered by having the building, and could you go to another view of this, the next one up? Actually, no, this is...
I can go to the, this
actually,
might be
the one that you're on was good. Go back to it, the first one that showed the landscape.
The
plan.
landscape, okay.
I think that works.
Yes, sir.
Next one down. That one, okay. Yeah, there's a dead space on the left side of the building, 15-foot space. And the way this building is configured, it's pushed back to the back of the site, 10 feet, reducing the 24-foot drive aisle along the back to a single way. And I see that as an issue for trucks, whatever, a conflict going through that area and just not having a normal free flow of access. The second issue I have is the lack of parking on the site. And I know in the developer's proposal, there was 56 parking spaces, and that was a deficit of 8. In staff's proposal, with the improved access, it's 15 spaces deficit. And your shared parking agreement allows for the developer to reduce future development on the site to match development and parking requirements on the total site. That works. My issue is timing. In other words, when the issuance of the CFO on this project, that there be the off-site parking available and in proximity to the development. And this project, the nearest existing parking that you'd use as shared parking is the Walgreens parking lot, which is about 500 feet away, according to Google. And the drive aisle, the east-west, I guess it's north-south drive aisle, that one, is partially improved. There's no sidewalk on it. And I'm envisioning some woman pushing a shopping cart with a couple of bags of dog food going down this or partially improved street and thinking this is not a configuration that I would assume meets the intent of the requirement of shared parking. And my thought is that the shared parking should be close and available. And so I would entertain, and actually I've written the words, but just in essence, suggest that parking be made available off this site that's close, either through the developer or through the master site developer, in sufficient parking spaces to accommodate that shortfall.
So they would actually abut the site.
What?
They would actually abut the site, so.
Well,
yeah.
close. I don't know where, but I mean, just saying closer than 500 feet. And that's my take on it.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may interject before you move on.
Okay.
That was exactly my main concern as well. So
Okay.
you expressed it perfectly, and before you move on with something else and ask the commissioners what we think, I just
Okay.
want to interject that was my same concern.
Okay. I have another thought, and that's a possible alternative to the way this project is configured. And the thought is to move the building to the south, the 15 feet that I originally concerned about, add 11 feet to the right-hand side or the north side of the project. And that way, that would allow a double-loaded aisle. It's 60 feet, put a double-loaded aisle. You'd have parking adjacent to the existing building there, and also down the aisle going down towards the main driveway. Down that way, yeah. So you'd have double-loaded parking that way. And with adding that and tweaking a couple of the medians, the landscape medians, you could get 31 parking spaces additional. And when you move the building back off the rear drive, you lose 10. The spaces that you have beside the building are 4. You'd lose those. Your net gain of that would be 17 spaces, and you'd have 66 with your configuration or more with their configuration. So I see that's a possible solution. May not be feasible from a developer standpoint, but that would be a project I could support in a heartbeat. With that, I'm going to punt it to Commissioner Campbell. Questions, comments?
Yes, I'd like to reiterate our chairman's concerns. It's seldom that we receive any projects that have been submitted to us that have over 36 recommendations. It's very difficult for us to go through each one of those to determine where the sidewalk is going to be, where the trash can is going to be, where, you know, the circulation. We can, from the recommendations, filter all that through and try to make sense of it. But it would be nice to be able to have a presentation that would be more refined. And I know that the recommendations coming from the staff are ones that are important to us because in the developer at the same time is trying to make it as efficient as they can as well. To get into this, if you could go back to either the master plan where it shows the circulation,
The master site plan,
where it will show the circulation of.
we're talking about this one or the whole site?
I'm concerned about the back of this building, the amount of space, as our chairman mentioned, that it would appear. I don't know if this is the one. I think if you can go. Isn't there one that's called master plan?
Go to
I
the
think
next
it's
slide
back.
up, forward, or
Go
backwards.
backwards.
I think it's backwards. I'm not sure.
And you're speaking.
Well, yeah, and I was going to look at the whole site because I think that what I'm looking at is.
Yep, the master site plan.
I was trying to see. Yeah, this is the one that. In the back part of this, is there a fire lane that would encompass or circulate this? Is that required in the back of this building? That there would be access for a fire department to come through?
There is, but it would work with the one-way, but it would have to be outletted because it is one-way. And we have one condition that would provide a temporary drive for that.
Now, I didn't look at the building close enough to see if there's a loading dock in the back. In other words, would there be larger trucks coming in to unload? And
I'd like to bring up the applicant to answer the business relay question, if I could.
Hello, how are you guys? My name is Dan Biswas. I'm with the developer. To answer some of these questions that you guys have brought up, we don't have very large trucks. I mean, as you can see on the site there, the only thing that they would have that is sizable loading from a truck perspective is the hay that they store inside the building. And if you can see to the right, there's a little loading zone that we have up there in the top northwest corner of the project. The only thing that they have that would, access that truck is a squeeze that they use for the hay to move the hay. I mean, as far as and I don't know if you see this here, but we have already addressed all of the concerns that were on the conditions of approval. I do have plans. I don't know if you guys are interested in taking a look at those as well, that kind of show the comparison between the two. The fire lane was actually one of the concerns that was brought up to the in the conditions of approval. And what we've done is we've put oh, sure. Oh, so you did put them on. Okay, perfect. So if you notice these last slides, I sent this PDF to Bart earlier today. You can see how the proposed fire lane will wrap around the building and attach to the newly constructed driveway on the south side. And we have no problem putting up any kind of specific signage to make sure that the one-way access is noted and understood by any kind of drivers in the parking lot.
And you're saying that as that's the temporary drive you're talking about?
Temporary drive, correct.
Until the rest of the site's developed, okay.
And also, if you notice down on the the eastern side where you were concerned about the access to Cotton Lane from the site, we've included details specifically for the sidewalk to connect to the existing sidewalk that comes in off of Cotton Lane. So that's going to be part of our project. We would build that prior to, any of the rest of the development being put in. So I'm not sure if there's any other specific questions. And this gentleman right here is John Bennett. He's the architect on the project, and he may be able to answer more technical questions as well. I'm not sure if you have any other ones.
Yeah, just one question on this particular, and I'm looking at the left-hand corner in the back. Is that a parking space or is that street flow through?
I'm sorry, where exactly?
It would be on the, would it be in the east? Yeah, right over well, it's on my left.
Are you talking about this whole area?
This area, right, yeah.
Right
On the
there.
other's opposite side, the opposite side. Just go straight across, right, yeah, oh, you're right there. Next one over. There's a space
left.
left,
To the
left, right there.
There are two parking spaces right there.
Now, is it street? Would that block the street, block the circulation?
No, no, all of those parking spaces are in accordance with the city code. We
Is
have
it-
the 2-foot overhang over the bumpers in the back, and then we have the additional, I think it's, what's the total parking? 20 feet?
Yeah, I'm not understanding this because it looks like there's landscaping around right up to that, abutted to that, and then that would be right in the middle of the driveway. Now, am I not reading that correctly?
Do you have the
Can we get
close-up of the site plan?
a better view of that?
Yeah, that's probably a better view there. So you're referring to these two spaces right here?
The last one, yeah. It looks like would that last one be eliminated?
One here?
Yes.
I mean, I
is-
don't
Can you
believe,
can the traffic flow through, or am I not seeing the actual
the
street?
traffic's flowing this way.
Okay,
This
so it
is-
goes.
This is a landscaped area. So this goes towards our open space requirements. And the fire lane would continue to the south and then wrap around to the
Okay,
east.
because on the other previous plan, it shows that landscaping abutted or came right up to that area, and it didn't show the street going through. That's why I was asking the question.
Right, exactly. And that was one of the conditions of approval that we were on that 2 pages that we had addressed.
That's been revised. then.
Correct,
Okay,
yes, and this is the
all right.
revised drawing. These are the revised
Right.
plans that I actually brought hard copies for you if you wanted to take a look at.
Well, I think you explained that part for me, so
Okay, great.
I'm happy with that.
And one other thing that I wanted to mention was that I know it was brought up that the truck turning, to the fire lane may have been an issue, but we did run truck turning diagrams that showed that, large fire truck would be able to make that turn no problem with the space that's available. So that shouldn't be an issue as far as left turn goes.
Okay, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Now, Commissioner Keating.
Thank you.
Just, pardon me, Commissioner, I just want you to know that staff received these drawings today, so there hasn't been a comprehensive review, just a look over, if you would. So just to keep that in mind, that these came.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Chairman, members of the commission, one of the reasons there are so many stipulations on this is that the developer wanted to hit this P&Z date. And we tried to make the commitment to the developer to meet this date. With that said, we still, oh, sorry.
Could you slow down a little bit?
Sorry.
Enunciate, because I'm not getting that.
Okay. One of the reasons that there's so many conditions on the staff report, staff doesn't like taking this many conditions to the commission. However, the developer wanted to hit this P&Z date. So in our commitment to work with the developer, the staff put together, Bart put together the stipulations, we reviewed them. We felt that this was a way of kind of making those dates be met.
Okay.
So that's why you're seeing so much of this. If we would have had to wait for revised drawings and so forth, it pushes them out another month almost. So this was just trying to be, basically customer friendly.
Okay.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
To the developer, from reviewing the recommendations that have been made by the staff, are there any recommendations that you found that you're not satisfied with or need to
No,
negotiate?
and as I mentioned, these plans, we had done them it was just a couple days after the deadline to get these plans turned in, and that was the reason why we weren't able to put these on the agenda originally, because the reason why the whole plan went in the way it did and why it's kind of rushed is because we don't own the property at this point, and it's all of the purchase of the property is conditional upon receiving building permits and to make the schedule with Pet Club. We've kind of tried to get everything submitted at the same time. So in that respect, we had to go through the civil engineering portion as well, the buildings plan submittal as well, and the planning all at the same time, including the plat as well. So, we had to make these changes right away because the civil engineering had to be approved with these additions made as well. And we have just gotten, I think we just got word back from the civil engineering department that these plans had been reviewed and okayed on their end. As far as planning and zoning goes, that's a different story. But all of the conditions of approval should be addressed in this, in these new plans. And as Bart mentioned, they haven't been formally reviewed, but we do plan on submitting those as soon as possible. We just wanted to make sure that we could get in on this schedule and continue with the March 3rd city council meeting. And that was kind of our goal there.
Yeah, thank you. So there's no stipulations and the
No
recommendations that
Sorry, I didn't.
yeah, okay.
Went on a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you. Okay.
And thank you guys again for taking this extra meeting and
Yeah.
meeting with us to help us out with that. We really appreciate that. So.
Commissioner Keating.
Yes, thank you. There's a lot of fill dirt on this property, and I know it was mentioned a little bit in the packet, but I wasn't completely clear as to what will the final grade be as to where the pad is developed, where the building is developed, especially in respect to the front driveway and the back wall where the homes abut the development. If I was a homeowner there and that building was built up at the level that it sits now, that would really concern me.
Yes, sir. I am going to refer this to the applicant because he does have the engineering drawings there, the ones that, the latest version.
And so obviously there is a lot of fill dirt on the site, and we do not want to build it on top of that. So it has been engineered through the civil engineering process to move the dirt that's existing and spread it out around the site evenly so that it doesn't impact the height of the building at all.
But none will be removed from the property?
We will remove some of the dirt. I mean, that's just part of the nature.
The pad site sits probably 6 feet above where the wall starts for the homes in their backyards.
Right.
So will the pad actually sit,
It'll be much lower than it is currently.
much lower, but it will still be higher than, like I guess at the back of the wall where the homeowner sits. There's a slight grade downward from
Right.
from the outside of their backyard.
Sure. I don't have the civil engineering plans in front of me, but I know that in order for them to make the drainage work correctly, they had to lower the building considerably just so that they could get the water to drain to the correct drainage areas in the front of the site. I know that they can't drain it to the back, which would make the water go towards the
Homeowners.
toward the homeowners. So
Mhm.
in that respect, I trust that they took every consideration to lower the building probably close to the street level on the east side of the property so that it can drain in that direction.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question
Well,
specifically.
partially, but I don't know if that's a good enough answer for me to vote tonight.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm not a civil engineer, but John may know a little bit more about the finished floor elevation to give a little more detail on that. He's not the civil engineer, and we actually were thinking about inviting them to come, but I didn't know that we would need to have their input, so I apologize for that. But do you know about the finished floor elevation or where they're?
Good evening. John Bennett with JT Designers. As Dan said, I'm not the civil engineer. I do know through coordination and dealing with TTG, which is a local firm out here that is working on civil engineering, we've spent an extreme amount of time working on sheet draining and getting proper drainage away, not only positive drainage from our structure, because as you see, we have the building and our front patio and everything else, but then not creating a negative swale along the west side of the building with the resident. I had to turn I'm from Indiana, so I'm slightly in a different world at the moment. But we did spend a good amount of time. As I recall, to the best of my ability, the last engineering drawings, majority of the drainage went towards the east across the north wide parking or drive lane, the 24-foot drive lane that you see. The TTG was spending a good amount of time trying to cost effectively figure out how to equally distribute the fill that's on site from when they did the drainage ditch on Cotton and Greenway, because that's where most of that came from, was when the drainage swale was done. the overall site developer, rather than hauling off, just backloaded to our property. And so now at this point in time, we're being asked to potentially remove some of the spoils and waste, which we are willing to do in order to make this functional, because we have to make it functional for our potential client as well. So to shortly address your word, are we dropped all the way down to below street level? No. But are we proposing to be essentially at street level? Yes. With a slight fall to the
That
east.
certainly helps with my question. So if I was a homeowner and my yard backed up to that, is everything going to slope away from and down to the existing streets that were just recently, it looks like, poured?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I will go back to the most recent that I have, and I know your concerns. And yes, most of this will flow to the east. Yes. Now, in the back, I know there's concern about the wall height. You know, where it's 6 foot on one side and maybe 4 foot on another. And so what is required is that to come down. There is a 20-foot required landscape buffer that has the trees in there. But the building is slightly higher than it is to the building. But it is about 40 feet away, but probably about 3 to 4 foot difference on that.
3 to 4? Okay.
I have one question regarding that. If you were standing at the back of the building, could you see in the homeowner's backyard?
No.
Because if the building is 4 foot higher and I'm standing up, I'm 6 foot. So now I'm 10 foot. And there's a 6 foot wall. Can I look over the wall and look at the homeowner's back? Do they have privacy?
Yes, with the distance of the lane and the landscaping, you're about 40 feet away, so what you would be looking at is probably what the maximum you'd be seeing are the heads of people walking in the backyard. Now, there also is a row of trees that are being put in there for the buffer zone and to block that view.
Okay. And those are my two concerns, drainage and privacy. And if only a little bit of that fill dirt's going to be removed from the site and everything else is going to be spread around that site, it just seems like that's a lot of fill on that small site to spread around and really, diminish. I just don't, see in my mind how it's going to diminish the height of the current grade very much with the amount of fill that's there.
Well, the building will be lower than the fill. On both sides, it will be higher and it will be pushed around. At some point, there is going to be an applicant that's going to come in and they're going to have to get rid of that dirt. I mean, there's just too much of that dirt on the site. What's that?
We're removing some of the spoils as part of our...
And now, I was just informed that they are, at this point, removing the spoils of dirt from the site, not spreading that around.
Okay.
Here.
Some of the fill dirt will be spread around evenly, but we are removing a good portion of it because it just doesn't work. And I don't have the civil engineering background to tell you exactly how much and exactly where it's going and those types of things.
I understand your gentleman's dilemma. But once we vote, if we approve tonight and it's built, the city council approves, and and it turns out to be a little different than what we're imagining because we don't have really concrete, exact answers. I mean, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
Sure, I understand your situation, but just to kind of go back to the point we were trying to make with the drainage, there are very specific requirements as far as where you can drain the water. So if there's a gully, and if you notice, the wall is basically at a very specific height. You can't really build the site up because otherwise the water will drain towards the back. So the civil engineer, I trust him wholeheartedly, has designed the site so that there will not be, I don't believe it's 4 feet higher than the lower in the back landscape area. There may be a slight grade differential, But I mean, that just doesn't make sense because the amount of water that would drain towards the homeowner's house is more than what we would be able to sustain. So I don't believe that that's the case, but I can't say from an engineering perspective that is 100% the case. Like I mentioned, we have to come as close as possible to get the slopes to the correct height as far as the front of the building. And obviously the building has to be level, so it can't sit, 5-10 feet higher than the road in front of it without having some kind of issues with the drainage. So, I know that all of this has been taken care of through the civil engineering portion of the project. Also, it's been documented in the grading and drainage plans on exactly what we plan to do with the fill dirt and where it's going and those types of things as well. It's just like you mentioned, the quantity of the dirt doesn't allow us to physically remove all of it from a cost standpoint, from a logistical standpoint, but we do plan on getting off as much as possible from that location.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So, thanks.
Ms. Kitty, are you done? Thank you. Mr. Prevey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, a general comment is I'm a little bit concerned that this project really isn't ready for prime time in the sense of being presented to the commission here. There are too many, I know this is going on, but I don't have the documentation. I think this is doing, I trust the engineers, so on. And it's not a reflection on engineering or anything else, but what you're doing is you're asking the commission to make decisions that the council is going to base their decisions on, and we don't have the proper information that I would expect that we should have. I'm very uncomfortable with this at this stage, and I haven't heard a lot that is making me more comfortable in the sense that what you're presenting is sufficient enough for me to sway me and say, yes, we know that what's going to get built is what was presented, and we're not going to have problems later. The specific, one thing on the lighting in the back of the property, there are 2 light poles. Have you addressed to ensure that you're not providing light pollution to the residences?
Yes, sir. It is required by code no more than 1 foot candle to go over a residential line. Mm-hmm. And they do, as a requirement, provide a photometric plan. So we make sure that doesn't spill into the residential.
Okay.
So they'll be fully shielded.
Yeah. In the fire lane there, I'm looking at basically, you're showing the entrance into the back at 24 feet, but based on where you have the build outs for the HVAC systems in the back or trash storage, whatever that is, it looks like that's about 14 feet. Am I looking at this correctly? Okay. Basically, a minimum, I think the requirement is you have to have 16 feet. You cannot put a ladder truck in the back there and be able to spread, it requires a minimum of 16 feet.
It's 12 by city code for one-way.
By the applicant, he is corrected. One-way traffic, it is 12-foot lane.
Maybe for traffic, but your fire apparatus requires more than 12 feet.
Right. This was reviewed and approved by the fire department, and they are comfortable with the 12-foot.
Interesting.
14.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Well, I guess mine is I understand the need for us to be business friendly, and I really support that, and we need to move projects along as fast as we can. But this can't be any more than just a one-time deal, because going through all of these stipulations does not give me a clear picture. So, I mean, to rush it beyond where we have a clear picture does not, I think, do justice to us being able to make a good decision. I understand the stipulations were all met, but it'd be nice to see a site plan that reflected all of those. And then I could vote, without going through all of this.
Yes, sir. About that, the stipulations, we have not reviewed these drawings that came in today, so we haven't officially
not been met, but
know that they are met.
They've been agreed to, and you just haven't reviewed them. But it's still, maybe we didn't do ourselves a real favor by rushing it too far.
sir. Thank you.
Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, just one more question, and I've already expressed my concern regarding the parking, but I do have a question regarding the trash enclosures, and it states that they're going to be located as far away from residential lots as is possible. Do we have an exact distance that those are away? And the only reason why I ask is because this is a facility where pets are going to be there for dog training, for vaccinations, so for vet services. So I would imagine that there's going to be animal excrement thrown in the trash cans, and I want to make sure that the neighbors don't have to deal with not only lack of privacy or improper drainage, but also any unpleasant odors that may be coming from the facility. So I guess we can add that to the list of concerns. So
You're correct. And when it first came in, the trash enclosure was actually past the curb point into the landscaped area, and we had to move as close as possible towards the building and away from the residents because of the noise, because of the smells.
So how far exactly are we talking here?
20
feet for the landscape buffer, and then another 14 feet for the road, and then there's, I think, 2 more feet. In addition to that.
And I'm sorry, could you please come to the
Yeah.
microphone so
Yeah.
it's on record,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I apologize. So if you notice on the site plan there's a 20-foot landscape buffer, a 14-foot road, so that's 34 feet, plus an additional 2 feet to the actual trash enclosure, so it's about 36 feet. In addition to that, Pet Club does not do veterinary services. It's grooming and wash services only. So there won't be pets being on site for more than a couple hours.
Okay.
So there won't be a lot of like pet excrements and those types of things in the dumpsters at all. Minimal trash in the dumpsters because there's not a lot of waste that's generated by the store. And I think that's the trash enclosures, the most concern that could come from them would be the noise, but that 20-foot landscape buffer is the idea. That's the reasoning behind putting that buffer there, is to get it as far away from the residents as possible so that they don't hear that noise.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much all I can say about that.
Okay, and I do appreciate that, thank you. But since it hasn't been asked, and since there has been a lot of concern expressed over neighbors in the residential area, were there any residents who expressed any concern? Was there an outreach meeting regarding this?
I believe, oh, sorry.
This being a site plan does not require an outreach meeting, so there was none held. And it advertised in the paper would be the final plat only, not the site plan.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. I have a question of staff. One of the concerns I had is the location of the building with the dead space along the left-hand side, southern side of the building. And my question of you is, if the building were moved and filled into that space, would this site meet the 15% landscape requirement?
This would still meet the landscape requirement. And to your point about moving the building, this particular center does allow 0 lot lines so that the buildings they're not just single buildings, that they're along one break. That was one of the concerns that staff had for this as well.
Okay, and not addressed by the developer yet. I have a question, a second thought along with that. If the building were moved the 15 feet to the south, then one could put more parking on the right-hand side of the building. It'd have to be parallel parking, but one could get what looks like another 4 spaces on that side, just throwing that out. And so I guess my question of the developer is, would you be willing to move the building to the south 15 feet? Or are there any other issues that I'm not seeing there?
Well, I think our only concern was making sure that we met the 15% open space, and that was the
Okay.
reason why that area was used. I mean, if planning and zoning is okay with us moving that building to the south, we don't have any issues with that. I mean, I do want to mention to the point about the parking. I mean, this is a pet store. It's not, I mean, if you go and ever look at like a PetSmart, or they're not intense, you know, traffic generators as far as like a Home Depot and those types of stores as well. I mean, it's a 15-year lease. They don't intend to go anywhere anytime soon. So, and as Bart mentioned, there's a 30% buffer for the parking. Is that right?
Up to 30% of the parking can be compact parking spaces.
Okay.
Oh,
That's what you're.
got it. Right. And so I'm not sure, you know, if the additional parking would be needed for our development, but, you know, we're definitely willing to work with you guys on that if the open area space wasn't an issue.
Okay. I think that I would like to add that as a condition at some point when we get to that process. The architect has a question or a comment to make, please.
Yes, sir. In a willingness to work with staff, who's been extremely generous, and this municipality, we've undergone several modifications simply to get where we are, and we feel like the feedback has been a positive flow in both directions. I realize the council looks at me as a professional, and we are. We reviewed your ordinances to the best of our understanding, and as we understood it, the green space was required, which was the only reason that we truly had that, was to meet the 15% threshold. If, as part of the PAD, and if staff is acceptable, as well as this council, being the lead professional of the team, I am more than willing to immediately get with our design team, shift the building, add the parking to address your primary concerns. We had the same concerns, if you will, over parking, especially when we ended up doing the nice extended landscape island in the compact spaces. I understand exactly where Bart was trying to go to meet the concerns over a jog at the end of the driveway. Physics or physics, I can't shove something bigger into a smaller hole. But by modifying it and working out where you saw this evening with the compact parking spaces, the two of us, your staff, as well as our design team, felt like we could reach that. If this council still feels, and if the green space, because this is part of an overall development, if we look at it from the 1,000-foot view and say, okay, as part of the overall development, the green space in that particular 15 feet is not near as critical as adding the additional parking spaces along the north property line, we have no problem. I'll immediately distribute that out to the engineering team, and we'll get everything updated. We just don't want to, this is, and I do want to make a comment to the comment that was made by working with us to try to express things. In the real world, I hope this council can sincerely appreciate that so much anymore in financing, especially in developer, and I'm speaking for my client, but so much is based upon getting local municipality approval just to get financing to go as far as where we've gone, that we really don't want to risk losing the financing for the project and potentially losing the project altogether. We are more than willing to do what needs to be done. I literally flew in from Indiana to be at this hearing because it's that important to us. So whatever you can do, we would greatly appreciate.
Okay. I have an additional comment that I'd like to throw out, another wrinkle in the process, and that is there's two issues. One of them is getting rid of the green space and possibly adding additional parking. There's the other issue of the one-way drive aisle behind the building. If you were to keep the building where it is, add space where that 15 feet is, and pull the back of the building forward, you'd have the same square feet. Actually, you'd have a few more square feet if you did it straight away. Just morph the shape of the building, pull the back of it forward, stretch it out to 15 feet, and you would eliminate the one-way drive aisle in the back.
I can try to meet you partway, but I can't meet you all the way on that one. I'm willing to shift the building to the south
Okay.
to pick up the parking on the north. Shifting the building to the east, there is some practicality with respect to the master site plan. I can't shove.
Okay, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. Is move widen the building, if you will, into that 15-foot former landscape area. Okay, widen it that way. And then move the back of the building that's adjacent to the back drive, move that forward. So all you're doing is reconfiguring the building on the back edge and the south edge where the landscaping is. The other two faces wouldn't move at all. Are you?
So you're asking us to completely re-engineer the building?
I don't know whether that's the
Because
case.
building plans are completely done and approved by the city.
I'm flabbergasted at that comment. How can the plans be approved by the city and it's getting to us for a review? That's a
Subject
question
to
Bart
this
or with,
approval.
Yeah, Chairman, members of the commission, it's pretty standard that we'll take in plans for at-risk. So that way, if everything goes accordingly, they're able to actually move along in the process. So, but the applicant is fully, notified that it's at risk, it's at their risk, it's not the city's risk. So, but it's a standard practice that we do.
Okay. Bart, you had a further comment?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to confirm that this has not been approved by staff at this point. There can be no approvals until there is approval by the commission and the site plan or the final plat by the city council.
Okay.
As they are in the system, but they're not approved at this point.
Okay. Do you have a comment?
Yes. Just a comment. I know that we've gone through a lot of detail here, and I think part of the reason that we did that is because of the number of recommendations that the staff has met, because normally we wouldn't have all these questions. But I must say that the developer has taken the initiative to already revise the plans and submit them even though they haven't been reviewed, has no objections to any of the staff recommendations to meet those expectations. And frankly, I see that if there's a way that we can approve this contingent upon the recommendations that have been made by the staff, meeting those recommendations, to be able to then forward that to the city council. Because personally, I think there has been a real positive response from the developer. And I think that if the staff recommendations are what you feel is strong and they've met those recommendations, and frankly, I don't have a problem with it.
One thing I would like to point out, Commissioner, is that the item that goes before council is the final plat and not the site plan.
Okay.
Yes.
So the site plan could be being drawn up at that point based on conditions and assuming the developer could reconfigure it, they'd go through the process and no problem. Am I hearing that?
And you will notice that one of the the conditions we have on that is this is actually deemed not approved until the final plat is approved.
Okay.
But during that time, they can work on that, of course.
Okay. Okay. A question of the architect, is there some functional issue with widening the building and pushing the back forward that would make it impossible to do that, or is it just a matter of a big design change and you've got to morph a bunch of stuff around?
I'm trying to find a good way to respond to
Design it in
that.
your mind, right?
Good way to respond to
Design it in
that.
your mind, right?
Can I ask a question, give you time to think about an answer for that? I understand the reasoning why we have a 15% landscaping for the project. I obviously understand the need for the parking in the project. But what is staff's opinion on this? What's more important here? Is it more important that we add more parking spots for this particular type of project? Because I do understand this isn't a heavy traffic area like a big box store or something would be. Or is it more important to have that 15% landscaping requirement met? And of course, I'm asking for your opinion here, but I think you know more about this stuff than we do up here. So I think your opinion is something that I would heavily take into consideration here.
I understand, but I'm not sure that my opinion would be allowed. I'm up here just to say if this does meet code, and to give my opinion just is not appropriate.
Okay.
Ask a question. You-
Mr. Tebman.
Yeah, I'd like to just, now that you've had time to think back there, the developer, architect, I can see where moving the building one way or another that is already designed and engineered is something that you can do without a lot of cost. But I see if you expand it, now we're talking beams, we're talking all kinds of different engineering, which would have to be basically redone. And I can see the expense there. So I think if you could respond to it, if we could figure out a way to look at shuffling the building, not expanding it, then I think, and I don't know if that would satisfy your
It satisfies
comment.
part of it, and I guess I'm looking for the whole apple.
Like most
And
everyone
we
does.
could create separate motions on that and go through and just see where we like.
Okay.
So one would be move the building the 15 feet, the other one would be to pull, well, actually, yeah. I guess there's an apples and oranges because if you move the building just the one way, then you've got the space on the right-hand side. If you move the wall and pull the building back, then you don't have the wider drive L on the other side. So there's two mutually exclusive issues there. And I don't know which one we would want to tackle first, and I'll let the architect respond with some comments.
And I appreciate Mr. Chapman's consideration of all the effort that,
Yeah.
believe me, it's not push a button design. To shift the building to the south and adjust the green space so that I could do then parallel parking in this, because then I would obviously pick up the 15 feet plus the 10 feet that are there. Now having 25 feet potentially, which only is truly required to have a 20-foot stall. So I'm 5 feet to the good. So now my 24-foot drive lane becomes 29 feet wide. That's well sufficient for any kind of fire equipment, things of that nature. And it would potentially create a little more, oops, sorry. Oh, I went there, yeah, other backwards. I would potentially, have a way to adjust that. And I'm speaking sideways because obviously I'm not the civil engineer. He has the bigger punt at that particular point. To move the building then also to the east and adjust our front patio, I know. To address Mr. Summers' comment, not necessarily redesigning the building, but if I'm dealing with a reasonable object that I have some flexibility with, the front display, and pulling the building towards the east to increase the one-way drive lane on the back.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting going to east. I'm suggesting widen the building to the south, and then pulling the back of the building, the alley side of the building, forward 10 feet.
I
Okay.
understand.
You understand, okay.
I understand where you're coming, and I'm trying.
Okay, explain, please.
I'm trying to meet you both ways. Rather than re-engineering the building,
Mhm.
because there is countless hours that have been spent not only on my side, but also the pet club people. They've had interior fixturing done. They've had coordination with their pet grooming done. This is, I mean, we've spent just inordinate amount of time doing that. So rather than changing the building and asking that so much to punt, I am willing to work with the civil engineer to adjust the building on the site to maximize that single lane. Now, to get it from 14 feet to 24 feet for a two-way traffic, I can't honestly stand right here in front of you, look you dead in the eye, and tell you I can absolutely pull that off. However, can I tell you that I can pick up a couple of feet and increase that where you're a little more comfortable with fire truck traffic for more of a 16-foot lane, as Commissioner Purvey had made comment to? Yes, that I do know. And then I am willing, if council so would behoove me, I am willing to work with my client, the developer, and the ultimate end user to see if by not having our primary entry element, which is, you know, big feature for them, this is going to be pulling, but not to have it quite as deep, or potentially we're willing to work that slightly with respect to the building. Maybe if that entry tower does not stick out so far on the front, that would allow me to shift and pull everything forward towards the front parking lot, then getting additional space. And those are commitments that I can stand in front of this council and make personally.
Okay. That's about halfway there.
I
From
got
my
you on
perspective.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I
on the
understand.
one for, you know, the parking, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'll make that, I can do that. Redesigning the building, I understand. You want the whole apple? I can't stand here in front of you and tell you I can give you the whole apple.
Okay. Bart, you have a question or comment?
I just wanted to add that staff have concerns on this from the beginning, and part of this is a final plat. And we asked for the final plat to be a little bit larger on there. We do have concerns. It does meet code, but it is tight. There is an option to add more to the site with the final plat. Since that is not being heard tonight, that will be heard by council.
Okay, so, well, I mean, that's basically,
Right.
basically adding 11 feet and that's the big apple versus the small apple.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know whether there's any mood to try to consider that on the part of the developer, and it looks like somebody's going to speak to me.
I can tell you right now, expanding the plat and the boundaries will kill the deal. We are not able to do that with the owner, the current owner of the land. He was giving us a very specific footprint for the development, and it cost prohibits any more than that. In addition, you know, Pet Club is already on the fence as whether or not this would be. I mean, the amount of money we've already spent it's very cost prohibitive to get to that point and then have to start all over again from the beginning. The timeline is another consideration, is hence why, you know, we've had numerous iterations. This project started, I think, a good 8 months ago. And you know, at this point, it's either hit or miss on the deadlines. And I think that going back to expanding the plat and making the site a little bit bigger, it just wouldn't allow the project to move forward. So that's the only issue on our side with consideration of changing the site on a larger scale. So
Okay, that answers that question. Bart, you have more? No, okay. I guess at this point we need to consider adding conditions for approval. One of the conditions I mentioned early on, I'm going to restate, and that is, and obviously we'd have to vote on to see whether we want to impose that, is providing some parking someplace on the site that would adequately provide shared parking. And I don't know, I'm going to wait and get the developer's response on
To clarify that, are you wanting us to do permanent parking in addition? Or are you saying to maybe do like with the fire lane, a temporary area just like to the south of the site where we had additional parking spaces, that may be a dirt lot or a compacted decomposed granite area for parking? Would that meet what you're kind of proposing there, or are you looking at a fully developed additional area for parking that's off the site until the rest of the development has been built?
I don't know, and I'll ask Bart to weigh in on that a little bit. I was just thinking that it seems to me you need it close, and I have a real problem with assuming that the Walgreens building would be adequate, and I would be either asking for a condition to put it as the way I described it, or I would be a no vote on the project. I mean, that's a killer from my end of the perspective. So the question is, what would be a normal thing to do in this kind of a situation, or a recommended thing to do?
I understand, and I'm going to have to go back a little bit to when the PAD was approved, and it was approved under Title 17, which did not allow unpaved parking lots. We could, I know some of the commission members were here when U-Haul came in, and there was the new compacted parking that had a binder to it and allowed a pervious soil through it, or the rainwater through it.
Okay.
But gravel parking is in Title 17 not allowed.
Okay, so it would have to be an impervious material of some kind, but it could be temporary.
It could be pervious to water, like we had at the U-Haul. It's highly compacted, and it has a binder, so stones are not kicked out. There's no stones being carried onto roads or anything like that. They would be bound.
But you're saying it allows water to soak into it. That's what you're saying, pervious. Okay.
Yes, and if you remember, the commission thought, or the opinion of the commission was that this was more of an environmental issue, because it is a new way to look at parking.
Okay.
And to satisfy some of the drainage issues.
Okay. And would there need to be other things other than just figuring out a way to have it where it's accessible to the site? Obviously, they'd have to work with the master developer to figure out where to put it and utilize it that way. But just an impervious surface, someplace where it's accessible and close to the site.
That can occur, but we would have to have pedestrian access from those spaces
Okay.
to the facility.
Okay, so someplace across the street, then it would make sense, or beside it, one side or the other.
It could go across the street if there is a crossing that is proposed on this, so
Okay.
it could go
Or on either side of the,
east.
or
Yes, sir.
wherever you got your drive aisle. Okay. Any comments or questions from any of the commissioners, or should I entertain a motion or make a motion? Because I have several listed. Comments, questions?
Hate to keep.
Mr. Keating? Yeah.
Thank you. I hate to keep beleaguering this, but I do have a concern about not knowing the final grade. This is an unusual site. Most sites are not like this in Surprise, where there is an enormous amount of fill, and we're starting at an unknown.
Okay. So that sounds almost like a no vote if I'm
that
listening
is-
I
correctly.
think that
Mr.
Mr.
Smith?
Chapman's comments, I think that the developer has really tried to meet most of the conditions. I would be very comfortable if we could somehow make the project go forward, but stipulate that all of the conditions are met and approved by staff, or it's a no vote. And maybe the parking concerns are addressed. I'm not sure that if they move the building over and add parking spaces, how many parking spaces are they going to be short after that particular?
Yeah, you could pick up 4 spaces, so it's not, it
It's not-
doesn't satisfy it. It just gets rid of the dead space and has a bigger aisle and a few more spaces.
So it doesn't come close to satisfying the total.
No, with the
How many would we be
staff's,
short by
with the
adding
staff's
those?
modified plan, it's
11.
deficient 15 spaces. If you added 4, it'd be deficient 11.
Okay.
So you still have to have an off-site or a
Shared parking
shared parking
agreement.
someplace.
And the shared parking agreement is obviously CVS
Okay.
at this point.
It is. And sir, I would like to also add that any of these projects that come in with conditions have to have full staff approval. There's another step after this that goes through staff to make sure that all the conditions are met.
I think we need to look at wording to satisfy the commissions, and maybe we can't, but I think that would be what we would look at, and then we could take a vote looking at it that way with these conditions.
You're saying and bring it back to us is what your request would be.
No, I think that we ought to vote tonight, but we ought to come up with the wording that, these conditions will be met. The approval is based on them adding
Okay.
11
Okay.
parking
And-
spaces,
Yeah.
et
and-
cetera.
Yeah, and staff has to.
Staff has to approve all of the,
Okay,
Just so we're on the same page as the developer, not changing the building, shifting it 15 feet, shifting it towards the east.
right, and I think we need to get the wording correct and listen to it before we could, see if it satisfies all of our concerns.
Well, my comment was, once you put a building down, you can't lower it. It's there. And if we don't know at what grade we're starting at, I know that the engineer is going to grade everything appropriately. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about, I would love to see this project go in there and that pad, that whole thing developed. But part of my job is to protect the residents. It's a big part of my job. And if I was living back there and that thing was built up really high and these 7 parking spots back there where the staff go out there and take their smoke breaks are sitting, looking down into my backyard, I would look at the commission and say, aren't you guys looking out for us?
Sure, and I completely understand your concern. The only reason why I don't have that information with me is because, this was a planning and zoning commission meeting, not a civil engineering, so I didn't bring the civil engineering documents with me because I did bring the new copies of exactly what was submitted for the conditional approval with the new changes. And we do have the finished floor elevation. It is part of the grading and drainage report. It's on the civil engineering plans. It has been, I heard today that it was approved from Maulin, the civil engineer. As far as the knowing the number off the top of my head, I just don't have that information. But we could put together, I could have like a sight line, elevation, side elevation put together by the civil engineer.
Possibly a condition.
Could we look at extending the height of the fence of the homeowners from 6 to 8 feet? And I know we've done that in some other places and other communities where we just take and, with their permission, extend the fence. I mean, they're 6-foot fences, and I know that I've seen some in different communities where we've had development extend the fence 2 foot, which is a very easy fix.
So I guess, my question to the developer would be is that, what, if this thing turns out that it's the final grade is pretty low and it's not a big deal, okay, no harm, no foul. Everything worked out great. But if it doesn't, are you willing to, to state here on the public forum that if there's homeowners that say, hey, you guys as a city didn't do your job and look out for us, is the developer willing to, to extend their back wall a couple feet if the final grade is, is higher than what we're hoping it'll be?
I would like to address that if you don't mind, Commissioner. In Title 17, walls in residential districts are limited to 6 feet. To your point about the elevation, there could be a condition to have an elevation that is equal or lower to any of the backyards in the other facility. But raising the wall in different PADs have different rules.
Right.
And this one goes by Title 17, which did require a 6-foot wall.
So I would ask the developer question, if we set a height condition of the building pad, is that something that you'd be willing to accept or work with somehow?
You know, as the
And
developer.
I know you don't know what it is right now.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, the only thing that I know not as the developer, but as from the position of having to go back and forth with the civil engineers on numerous iterations with the engineer for the city of Surprise, there was very specific changes that needed to be made on their behalf, and I know that changing the grades and the height of the building would affect quite a bit of other things as far as drainage goes, and I don't know the engineering possibilities of whether or not it's feasible with the plans that we've put together, or even with the site itself. So I can't really say that it's possible, but I can say that we would definitely be willing to work with you guys on making that happen if it is feasible.
Could we also change maybe the landscaping behind? Make it a denser landscaping?
That is a possibility to put in the landscaping higher, but
You know, different types of trees that provide much denser.
right now there is quite a few trees back there, but
I mean, that would be cheaper than trying to regrade or refence or something like that. Just make sure that the landscape, the type of landscaping and the density of the landscaping protects the homeowner's privacy.
So a condition to make the landscaping dense across the back? I mean, could you word it in such a way? You know, looks like the developer's wanting to dive in.
I mean, if you notice on the landscape plan legend, there's quite a bit of
Could
big plant.
move to
I'm
the-
sorry. If you notice on the landscape plan there, you can see there's quite a bit of large plant material planted back there that should do the screening, and that was part of the landscape requirements. We had a certain number of trees and shrubs in certain sizes that we needed to put in there. I can't see from here exactly what the sizes are, but they're all specified directly in the plant legend there. So I adding more landscaping I don't think would be a problem. I think there is quite a bit of large landscaping that would be installed in there as part of the current plan. But yeah, we would
Could
definitely.
staff review that and determine that that would provide sufficient privacy?
we could. As you may already know, we do have a registered landscape architect, Jackie Keller, that could look at that.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. If he could
Absolutely. Yes,
come and say, this will provide, the best privacy we can afford the homeowners.
Yes, sir. Sort of evergreen trees and
He's
the size.
the
going in.
landscape architect. I mean,
Yes.
I'm just asking if he could come
I
up
would,
with something.
I would love to hear as a commissioner something that protects the citizens when I feel like we're potentially moving forward on something that's not completely known to us, as far as the final grade goes.
Understood. Yes, sir.
Okay. I would like, if we're sort of all at an end point here, to offer up some conditions, and I'd like to do them one at a time and get a vote on it so that we can do them individually and see where this goes. The first one is that the developer provide or cause to be provided off-site parking spaces to be available at the time of the certificate of occupancy to act as shared parking in sufficient numbers to offset the on-site parking deficiency. I've got this written down if you want, or if we want the exact wording on that. Anybody have any comments on that, one or the other, as far as changing it, altering it? City Attorney has a comment.
Excuse me, Chair, but to the extent that you could establish a number of parking spaces, if that's possible, that would be very helpful.
If I say one thing, John has actually come up with a sketch while we're sitting here of a possible solution on the site directly across from the street on the Cotton Lane. I don't know if there's a way to show it to you guys with, but he was looking at doing, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I worded that specifically so that whatever the requirement is for the building and whatever whatever is provided on the site, that difference becomes the requirement for the offsite. I think it'd be easy enough to do the math. If we wanted to, we could say 15 parking spaces, which is it's a deficiency with the original design, and if you add more along the edge of the building, that can be reduced from the 15. That's, I don't know whether that would work for you.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I was just in consultation with the Community Development Director, and your original approach of the number of parking spaces as required will be fine as long as we modify that with the concept that we're not using the shared parking. So the number of parking spaces required per code without a shared parking.
Okay, I'm not sure where that goes in this.
Well, I don't understand. I don't know how we're going to get that without shared parking. That's my concern with that.
No, I think what she's saying is the number required does not include the shared parking.
Oh.
So you have the requirement of the project based on the square footage, and you have what's available on the site, and the remainder of between what's required and what's on site must be provided off-site.
That's correct. It
Is
would be
what I'm saying.
adjacent to the site
Adjacent to
and accessible to the site,
excuse me for that.
and by code.
Just meanwhile, we get a little input from the city attorney to make sure we get it right. So much for our 15-minute meeting. Obviously, this is an important issue, and we want to get it right, and we want to be able to get this project rolling. So,
I believe there were some other conditions that.
yeah, I do have other conditions, and they're on the
barrel. Okay.
they're on the page that that I gave the attorney. And I need the exact wording on that, so I can't go there just yet.
It is in good hands, yes.
Okay. One of them was to remove the revision clouds of the drawing, and they're probably already removed on the plan, so, but they're on this drawing, and that's probably a non-starter. Okay, let me read this and see if we're happy with this. That the developer provide or cause to be provided off-site parking spaces to be available at the time of the certificate of occupancy to be provided adjacent to the site to meet the code requirements. Okay, does that work? Are we happy with that? That's a motion. I'll read it again, and could we have a vote on it? That the developer provide or cause to be provided off-site parking spaces to be available at the time of the certificate of occupancy to be provided adjacent to the site to meet code requirements.
We need a motion.
Do I have a second?
Chair,
Yeah.
are you going to vote each one, or are you just going to kind of take a poll and then do a motion of everything together?
Okay, we could take a poll. Anybody opposed to that? Seeing none, okay. Next one would be to move the building 15 feet to the south and install parallel parking along the north side of the building, plus move, and I'm changing this a little bit, and you may have a comment on that, plus move the back of the building to the east as far as possible,
And
or as far as practicable or something.
yes,
Do you have a question?
I would actually prefer if the parking wasn't specified as parallel, because we do have options to have angled parking that would
Okay.
produce a safer. So
Okay.
just if we had the addition,
Additional parking.
and if that's,
Okay, so it reads, move the building 15 feet to the south and install added parking along the north side of the building, plus move the back of the building to the east as far as possible.
or to provide appropriate 2-way traffic at the rear of the building.
Yeah, I don't know that he can do that.
Yes.
That's what he's saying.
The
Yeah.
width, to widen the,
If you're talking about re-engineering the building,
No,
I'm opposed to
Yeah,
that.
I'm not. I'm talking about sliding the building over. He's saying he can adjust the back a little bit.
Move the
Or you're
entire,
saying move the whole building forward? Let me ask the architect to clarify that.
What I was trying to explain, and as I said, I probably wasn't doing it
Yeah,
clearly.
could you up your volume, please?
Thank you. What I was trying to explain to you earlier, and probably wasn't doing it very clearly, my comment was, I'm willing to shift the building to the south as requested. That's
Okay.
fine. Then I'm willing to shift the entire building to the east and reduce my front patio area,
Okay.
and potentially reduce my entry tower element as reflected on the elevations, so as to gain additional space in the drive lane that's in the rear. I cannot truly achieve the requested 24 feet, but I will do all in my power to maximize it to the highest number that we can achieve without completely redesigning the building.
Okay, yeah. Well, the requirement would be to move the building 10 feet to get your 24-foot drive aisle on the back. So you're saying maybe, but maybe not, is the way I'm reading it.
Yes.
There would be another, well, and this goes on and on and on, another possibility to do a, you're not going to get enough, never mind. So let's go back to the motion, see if I got it. Bart, do you have anything to jump in on, or? No, okay. Move the building 15 feet to the south and add parking along the north side of the building, plus move the building to the east as far as feasible.
I'd still like to say I would disagree with moving it to the east. I don't think that we know exactly what it would provide. We don't know what it would do to the parking that is to the east of the building. I think moving it to the south, we know exactly what we are approving. Moving it to the east, we don't.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think what he was saying is he was gonna reduce the patio in front of the building by just reducing, there's a patio. If he just reduces it by 2 feet, he can move the building forward 2 feet. And what you've done is you have a 2 feet smaller front patio. Maybe you could move it 3 feet, maybe you could move it 4 feet, but that's what he's talking about. He's
Yeah.
not really talking about
It may not get us
changing
as far as we
anything that
want
would
to do.
change the front parking of the east side.
I fully understand exactly what he's saying.
Yeah. So you're saying don't move the building forward at all, or don't even attempt to move the building
East, that's
forward?
correct.
Okay.
I'm fine moving it to the south. I
Okay.
see no need to move it to the
And
east.
I'll ask Mr. Smith and Mr. Prevey their thoughts on moving it. Yeah. Mr. Smith?
I think that his offer to move it forward would be beneficial to opening up the fire lane in the back.
Okay, so that's two for, one against, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I think moving it forward a little bit, or to the east a little bit, has some benefits both in
Okay.
emergency vehicle access and even the privacy factor that I've been harping on.
Okay, so the last motion I made, I think, stands then. Do I need to read it again, or are we good with it?
We're good.
Could I have a,
So I'm clear, is there two extra conditions being added to this? So it would be F and G?
I have more.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. These are easy, and they may already have been changed on the new plans, and this is talking about the call out of the square footage and the parking requirements on both the architectural site plan and the master site plan. They're in conflict with each other, and they don't, in one case, one of them just doesn't work at all. So it would be to modify both of those, and it would say, change the required and available parking callouts on both the architectural site plan and master site plan to read 16,000 feet divided by 250 square feet equals 64 feet. Parking spaces required, and the number provided, whatever that number is. So that was my other condition.
Oh, to the maximum amount of parking?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
you know, whatever, so it's what's required and what's provided. And we'll know what's provided when they finish their plans.
I don't have a calculator on me, but yes, I can check that.
Are we good with that? Then could we have a motion to approve these three conditions then?
And I believe if we use as required by code, that would cover the parking spaces completely. And staff would make sure that every space is there and accessible.
And okay. Parking spaces, 64, well, you're saying,
I'm sorry?
I don't know what part of your suggestion that we do that. Change the required parking available and call-outs on both the architectural and master site plan to read, you're just saying to read required, code required?
I believe the previous
Rather than come up
comment
with a number?
was about, was about the maximum, what it was required by code for this size of building.
Okay. The code required number of parking spaces, so that would be one thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, could we have a motion?
I have one question. Do we need to put anything in to have the landscape architect?
I was just updated by
Okay.
This guy.
Eric just updated me. He was able to find some finish elevations of the home nearest
Okay.
this pad and the pad, and it's only a difference of not even that, right? Yeah, maybe 8 inches difference. So that
Good
answers
point.
that
Okay.
answers my questions, and that makes me feel much better about the finished grade and being able to make
Well,
a
then,
decision.
do we need to have the landscaping condition, or does that,
No.
or does that go away?
Me personally, I would not need that. I don't think that's necessary any longer.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Or no,
We're in the motion, yeah.
Donna is,
Mr. Chair, just because it might be difficult to have a clear record at this point, if we could restate the motion, and I'd like to give you sort of a format, if that would be helpful.
okay.
If the motion could include, if the motion is to approve, that it would be approved subject to the staff stipulations as further modified by the additional commission stipulations, which I hope that you will reread into the record right now.
Okay. that the developer provide or cause to be provided off-site parking spaces to be available at the time of the certificate of occupancy be provided adjacent to the site to meet code requirements. Number 2, move the building 15 feet to the south and install added parking along the north side of the building, plus move the back of the building, move the building to the east as far as feasible. Change the required and available parking callouts on both the architectural site plan and the master site plan to read the required parking spaces and the number provided. The required code parking spaces. The code required parking spaces. Crap. Pardon me. Do we follow that? Or do I need to restate
I
that?
can make a motion to approve the amendment.
I second.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Please vote. My system did not light up.
Sorry, can I get your vote?
What's your vote?
Your vote.
What?
What vote? What's your vote? She wants to just
Okay,
tell us.
my vote is yes.
Okay. Motion passes, 6 yes votes, 1 absence.
Thank you. He says, next item.
Thank you
Sure.
very
We gotta-
much. Personally, you gave me an opportunity to leave -5 degrees to come out to 80. I sincerely appreciate this.
Did we vote?
I don't think we voted on
We didn't
the-
vote
I
on
don't
the
think we
actual.
voted on the
Oh, so we just voted on the motion. Pardon
We
me.
voted on the amendment, so we have
Okay.
one more vote here.
Okay.
Then you can thank us. Maybe.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the site plan for the Surprise Pet Club retail facility, subject to the staff's findings and conditions A through E, and the commission's conditions 1 and 2 and 3, as listed as listed.
Does that work?
I think with the way our system's set up, you'll probably end up having to do a roll call vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's fine.
So we have a motion, then a second.
Second.
Can I get a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Motion passes, 6 yes votes, 1 absence.
Thank you. Thank you all. Give me a minute to get down to where the rest of my stuff is here. Okay. We need to move item number 3 to the bottom of the agenda so that it works in concert with the public hearing on the project, and so it gets in sequence. So the next item would be item number 4, and that's consideration action on funding recommendations for public service activities for the Community Development Block Grant Year Program 2015 and 16. Could we have the staff presentation, please?
Good evening to the chair and members of the commission. This is the second meeting to a meeting that we had 2 weeks ago having to do with the funding recommendations for the Community Development Block Grant Public Service Fund. We're going to briefly go over the grant process again, just for the benefit of the public. We're going to talk about how the applications were evaluated, and then we're going to have a funding discussion. Just as a background, the City of Surprise is an entitlement community where we receive funding directly from HUD. We were very lucky in the last couple of days. We actually received the full amount that we're going to be awarded. Right now that's contingent on approval by Congress, but we have $551,309. So this is about a $10,000 difference from what we had initially anticipated, in a positive $10,000. So right now what we're going to be speaking about is specifically $82,696 that is now available for public service funds. As you are well aware, whenever awarding any sort of program, it has to meet a national objective where the person that you're benefiting either has to be a low to moderate income person, it has to benefit an area, or it has to benefit a specific clientele. If it doesn't meet one of these criteria, it doesn't qualify. And with regard to area benefit, the only projects that are applicable for this type of funding is the original town site. When it comes to low to moderate income individuals, if you do something where the individual is qualified for the service, it doesn't matter where they live, as long as they qualify, like a food box or daycare service, then that's how you would qualify them. A limited clientele would be seniors, homeless, disabled adults, a special population. As discussed before, some of the high priorities that we have seen in initial survey results have been the need for childcare, youth services, as well as recreation services for youth, healthcare. A huge one this year, a big theme that we've heard, is job training and job creation, education programs, public safety services. We've also seen a new trend having to do with veteran services that are necessary, services for homeless persons, drug abuse counseling and treatment, and also what are called welfare payments, which is basically emergency utility payments, emergency rental assistance, that sort of thing. We started this application period in December, and it went through January 16th. Again, 2 weeks ago, we had a public hearing where you were able to hear from the applicants themselves. We're going to ask for a recommendation today, which we will take to the City Council in April in the form of a workshop and a formal council meeting for a ultimate submittal to HUD on May 15th, on or before. So, as you're well aware, we received over $194,000 in applications and requests for funding. Arizona Bridge Independent Living, Benavia, Central Arizona Shelter Services, St. Mary's Food Bank, Arizona Charter Academy, Aid to Adoption to Special Kids, Tumbleweed, and the City of Surprise. All of those services do in fact qualify. We also provided with you just a general scoring that the staff had done based on the rubric that had been approved by Planning and Zoning, based on, is this a service that is needed in this area? Is it a service that's sustainable? Have they done it? Are they ready to go, or shovel ready, if you will? And then do they have references? Do they have a good track record with us? So we talked about, excuse me, several of these service providers, how Arizona Bridge Independent Living just received funding from us last year, as well as St. Mary's Food Bank. They've received funding from us for the past 5-6 years, and so they've accumulated quite a bit of funding from us. CAS is working through funding right now. Benavia also received funding from us, but then they also received funding from the Community Outreach Grant, which is a different grant that comes out of the general fund. Arizona Charter Academy has received funding in the past. We have not funded Aid to Adoption to Special Kids or Tumbleweed in the past, but both of these are organizations that are well established and funded by other federal agencies. And then, of course, City of Surprise for the Summer Youth Employment Program. So basically, these are the funding recommendations on behalf of staff. This is, of course, a starting point for you. This is for you to begin your discussion on where you feel these funds may be most appropriately used, best leveraged, best invested. As you can tell, we did recommend some funding for all of the organizations. The unfortunate part to that is that it's very watered down. You know, you have organizations such as ABLE that want $30,000, $40,000. Here we're only offering to give them $15,000. St. Mary's Food Bank also asks in the $20,000 frame, 11,000. And so we did, you know, again, provide a starting point where we're able to provide everybody a little bit of funding. I think that they're all able to use this funding, nor do I feel that it will preclude them from having their programs available to the community. But this, again, is a starting point for that conversation. So with that, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Mr. Prevey now. Sorry. No questions. Mr. Smith.
Well, I mean, it is watered down. It looks like it's spread and obviously used the scoring rubrics. I always look at how many residents does each charity benefit, and you know, are they the most needy? So, you know, we all could sit down and come up with a different allocation, and I'm sure every one of us here would come up with one. I don't really know how we would proceed other than if we have strong feelings one way or another. You do, as she said, I'm looking at St. Mary's Food Bank, and they were awarded $20,000 last year, and we made the decision to reduce that to $11,000. Now, I know they have additional funding sources, but they are on the front line of feeding, which I think is probably the most critical need. So each of us could come up with a different funding. I don't know how we would even attempt to do that. Mr.
Benning.
I do agree. I see a greater need at places like St. Mary's or Benavia, and a lesser need at, let's say, the Arizona Charter Academy. And I also looked at the scoring system, and Arizona Charter Academy was one of the lowest scores that were on ours, yet it's one of the highest in the amount that we're funding. So if I were to make some kind of suggestion, it would be to decrease that amount and add it to either St. Mary's or Benavia services that do provide, as you said, something that I think is more on the front line.
Okay. Mr. Chapman.
Very difficult decision. I agree with the comments that have been made. I also agree that the AZ Charter Academy, where it stands, I think is generous, and I think if there were any movement to benefit Benavia or St. Mary's, I'd certainly agree with that.
Okay. Mr. Keating.
I concur with the commission's comments, and I don't have any further input.
Okay. I'm seeing two people suggest lowering the Arizona Charter Academy and raising St. Mary's Food Bank.
Or Benavia.
Or Benavia, and two people push for Benavia. I would go along with reducing Arizona Charter Academy and adding something to St. Mary's or Benavia, and I'm not sure how we would want to allocate that, and whether I see our staff looking and running a calculator, so maybe she has a thought.
Well, I brought my calculator. That's what I brought out. I don't know if any less than 12,000. I'm not sure what kind of program they can have, because I know that they look to do a couple of like the spring program, the fall program, and the summer program. So I didn't know if you were looking to just reduce it to maybe just a summer program or eliminate it altogether.
You're talking about the academy?
Arizona Charter Academy, right?
They do the soccer program in the summer?
Well, I believe that this is like a basketball, football camp that does kind of like technology, mathematics. So it's the athletic part is the carrot to bring them in to do the academic part. And so, yes, they have it over all of their breaks. So I don't know if you wanted to just put it to one break.
How much
so that
would
you
it be
reduce
to
it?
just fund like the summer? Because the kids in the original town site could really benefit from the educational experience. So.
Okay. So I believe that the original was around 18,000. So this is 1/3 off. So maybe, half of what they're looking for, that would be 9,000-ish. So then if you're looking at an extra 3,500 to put somewhere else.
Yeah, and how about the Tumbleweed Center for youth. We didn't fund that last year.
No, they are a new applicant. And so I believe that they were looking for about $10,000. And so they wanted to do a outreach education portion and then a bed night where they're actually a shelter and they would just charge us for the bed nights of teens and that are homeless and
They would
such.
only charge us for surprise residents.
Right, whoever is self-declaring as a surprise resident, because not many of them would have IDs and such. So we kind of took out the outreach portion, not really knowing who they're outreaching to or who the real beneficiary is, and then we would just do a reimbursement basis based on the bed night.
That's what your estimate would be of just bed nights, because I could see funding bed nights, but the outreach program, I had some concerns
Correct.
also.
That was the methodology in that reduction.
Okay, well, and if you think it's that many bed nights, I'm not sure if, yeah, and
Well-
obviously they could stay for extended periods of time, too.
Correct.
So, that's an estimate, if.
Correct.
Okay. If they didn't spend all of it, what would we do with the money?
We only reimburse based on what they spend.
So if they didn't spend that, then where would the money go?
The money goes back into projects that we do in CDBG. We wouldn't add it to anybody else on public services. It would just go back into the big pot that does like roads and parks and things like that.
Okay. I'm seeing a couple that would like to reduce Arizona Charter Academy by $3,500, and I would join that camp and put it either in St. Mary's Food Bank or Bena Via. Could I have any feedback on what we might want to do with that, if that's...
Well, yeah, what I'd like to see is whether we can add an additional 2,000 to St. Mary's and also 2,000 to Benavidia. So,
Then we'd make a
and
$4,000
take it
reduction.
4,000 out of the,
Sounds good to me. I'm
Yep.
hearing people shake their head, so...
So just to clarify, reduce Arizona Charter Academy's funding by $4,000.
Correct.
And add 2,000 to each St. Mary's Food Bank and Bena Via. Could I have a motion to that effect? Is that, oh, actually,
If everything
this
else is
is
fine.
a public hearing, so
Right.
I'm going to open the public hearing for comment, and then we'll deal with how we want to deal with this.
And Heather, I will fill out the appropriate paperwork. Chair, Vice Chair, new Vice Chair, congratulations, new Commissioner Keating. It's been a while since I've been to a meeting. My name's Andy Sepon. I live at 17161 West Terra Lane in Surprise, 10 years. I work with a lot of charities, Fraternal Order of Eagles, Surprise Lions, a number of charities in this city. And I like to point out two things. Although all charities are worthy, I like to see the biggest bang for the buck. The Eagles is a relatively new organization in this city. We have limited amounts of funds. Over the last year, we've donated about $1,000 for meal programs for needy families at Arizona Charter Academy. They do focus primarily on the original town site, which is the neediest area. I do know for a fact that they were a C or a D-rated school 3 years ago. They're now an A-rated school. For the last 3 years, they've had a 100% graduation rate of their seniors. They just have a great impact in the community. And as a charter school, I'd hate to see them lose money in one of the neediest parts of town. To play devil's advocates, somebody like St. Mary's Food Bank, although a great charity, a great impact, every year, year in, year out, Virginia Piper Institute and St. Mary's average about $40 to $50 million a year raising funds in Arizona. Sending extra money, does it have a greater impact locally? Probably, but that $2,000 or $3,000 you're taking away from the Charter Academy could potentially have a more delirious impact on the students. They're all worthy charities. You guys have to play King Solomon and split the baby. But I'd like to see it go into the original town site, which is the neediest part of our community. And I think the Charter Academy, I've seen wonderful things over the last couple of years. Again, I'm not affiliated with them. I'm not speaking for them. I have been involved with volunteering with some of their charities and raising money for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this issue? I'm going to close the public hearing. Ask the commission if they have any comments on his comment as far as allocating or reallocating the funds. Mr. Keating, are you going to say something? Or?
Yeah. Well, thank you for speaking. You enlightened me. I didn't know as much as I do now after hearing you speak. Thank you. I appreciate that. And, I think he makes a good point. While St. Mary's is a great organization, when we're talking about the bang for the buck, just keeping more of that money right here for youth that have been at risk, does that make a little bit more sense? Maybe don't pull as much as we were thinking about pulling.
I'm still fine with
Yeah,
what was presented.
Ms. Peavy, are you fine with where we were, or, okay, Smith? Yeah, I too. It looks like that's a majority, so we will go with that. So, could we have a motion then?
I do have a question. When we read the motion, do we have to restate the new amounts that we're going to allocate, or? Yes? Then I'll start.
Do the math.
I think I've already done it, so correct me if I'm wrong here. I move to approve the CDBG public service funding recommendations as follows. St. Mary's Food Bank, $13,480. Able, $15,580. Cass, $5,000. Benavia, $12,000. Arizona Charter Academy, $8,539. Aid to Adoption of Special Kids, $3,000. Tumbleweed Center for Youth Development, $8,200. Surprise Summer Youth Employment Program, $16,897, for a total amount of $82,696.
I second.
Yeah, I have a problem. The last number, the total funding, I'm reading on the staff report, says $81,291.
Right, that goes back to the fact that we just received the new amount from HUD.
Okay, so he's got the new amount, okay. I don't have that.
Yeah, so that is the,
Okay. What? Yeah, okay, then we're good. That's a motion. Do we have a second? Could we vote, please?
Motion passes, 5 yes votes, 1 no vote, 1 absence.
Thank you. Next item will be item number 5 on the agenda, and that will be consideration and action recommending to the mayor and city council approval of a rezoning entitled W Ranch, generally located on the north side of Waddell Road, about a half mile east of the intersection of Waddell Road and Bullard Avenue. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yeah, hopefully with this will be a little bit quicker. This is an exciting project for the city. It is an infill project located along Waddell, and a lot of people might recognize this as the property just to the west of the Dales Town and Country. Just a little bit closer in there. It's a little over 10 acres. And what they're trying to do here is to provide 24 homes with a density of 2.29 acres, dwelling units per acre. And as per the general plan, this is low-density residential, 3 to 5, and this fits in nicely with that, as well as the infill fills one of our goals in the general plan. This landscape plan showing this. This is a gated community, and you might notice that we did put stipulations on there for sidewalks on both sides of the street. What staff does is anticipate the worst case scenario. If this does become public, we want to have those facilities put in. This is a little bit of the wall plan that will be surrounding the community. And this preliminary plat is recommended for approval. Pending any questions you have.
Thank you. Start with Mr. Mr. Freebie. Mr. Smith?
No questions.
I have no questions.
Okay. Mr. Chapman?
Yes, I have a question. On the site plan, it shows only one street into this project. And could you share with us the circulation that, would there be a requirement to have 2 access points to this
Yes, sir.
development?
Just to go back a little bit, when this first came in, it went through several different development attempts to design this. We wanted to make it part of Royal Ranch, and with negotiations, we got an emergency exit for fire truck only at the end of the cul-de-sac here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Mr. Keating?
No questions.
I have a question. Your comment about if it would revert to the city. The 2 issues that I had with this project is a street sweeper going into those T intersections and trying to clean them out, and trash truck. You're saying that there's a private development, and if it's a private development, the HOA would be required to blow out the trash that accumulates in the corners of that and deal with the trash in some way. May not be a pretty way, but it could be dealt with. My concern is if it would ever become a city street, then you have a street sweeper, you have a city trash truck trying to get in there and provide service. And I see that as an issue that would be, I think, problematic for the city to try to maintain it. And so I guess my question is, can we ensure somehow that it would be maintained by an HOA and it would not become a city street, that would prohibit it from being dedicated?
Absolutely. I'll ask the applicant.
Chairman Summers and fellow members of the commission, my name is Troy Peterson, 14100 North 83rd Avenue. In answer to your question regarding the turnaround or maintenance vehicles, trash pickup trucks, the hammerheads they're the configuration of the turnarounds that are frequently called, those have been designed with appropriate movements so that fire trucks, trash trucks, and certainly those are bigger than street sweepers, so street sweepers as well would be able to maneuver and turn around quite easily in those. That's the hammerhead configuration is used in this situation fairly commonly and effectively as well. But back to your original question of the maintenance of this is a private street project being proposed. The streets will be owned by the association and will be maintained by the association as well.
Okay.
I would like to add the trash pickup that you referred to. The city of Surprise can negotiate with that. We have different situations, like Sun City Grant has private, while Mountain Gate has public services. So that would be a negotiation they would have to do with the city to provide that.
Okay. And so if the city were to agree to do that, then it would have to meet the requirements. Okay. I think that removes my issue then. Could we have a motion then, if there's no other further questions?
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council of a preliminary plat for W Ranch based on staff's findings and conditions A through F as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes, 6 yes votes.
Thank you. The next item, which is item number 4, consideration and action on funding recommendations. Oops, wrong one. Item number 3.
Mr. Chair, point of information. I'm sorry, did we have a public hearing on that item?
Yes, we did. We had
Okay.
one.
Thank you.
The public hearing would be for this project,
Oh.
not the implement plan.
Yeah, we're on item 5.
What?
We're on item 5 now.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, we did it, okay. So let's start over again with this. I thought we did item 5 first, did we not?
3.
I'm sorry?
Did we not do item 5 first?
Chairman, members of the commission, you did do item 5 first, then you'll be going into item 3 next.
Oh.
Oh, then I made
I think the motion was for the wrong item.
the motion for the wrong item.
Okay.
So then we need a new motion for item 5?
For, yes.
Could I-
Oh,
Mr. Chair, let's just make sure that the record's very clear. If we could have Heather, can you read what motions we have, and then we can fix them? Or even just the last motion?
The last motion. I believe was a motion to recommend approval to the mayor and city council of a preliminary plat. Is that the one that you read?
That's correct. That's what I
Okay,
read.
for W Ranch, based on staff's findings and conditions A through F as listed in the staff report.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
That's what the issue might be. This is the preliminary plat, and there is only condition A.
All right, so I think it might be most clear to just have a new motion, and rescinding the previous motion and making a new motion how you would like it to read.
Now, my question is, are we doing item number 3 on the agenda at this point? Is that,
I think once you take a motion, then you'll move to item number 3, if I understand correctly.
Yes, our recommendation is that you hear item 5, and then you vote on item 3. So the zoning first.
okay, I see it, because it's pulled down behind it.
Right.
Okay, I'm just looking at this backwards. I'm sorry. Could we
And
have a
then the
motion
plat.
then, please?
Well, my fault. I had them backwards. That was-
So first of all, I need to rescind my last motion. I
Please.
rescind the last motion that was made.
Thank you.
my second.
We have a second. Could we vote, please?
We're voting for.
That would be great to vote on that.
Okay.
I make a motion, I move to recommend approval to the mayor and the city council of a rezone for W Ranch based on the staff's findings and condition A as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Mr. Chair, may I restate the motion just to make the record clear? I believe the motion was to both rescind the previous motion and adopt a new motion approving the rezoning for W Ranch, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
And I believe we need a call to the public for this item.
And yes, you're right. We will need this will be a public hearing, so we'll let that motion hang until you open and close your public hearing.
Okay, we're calling this a public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on this issue, please step forward. Hearing none, the hearing is closed. Could we have the restated motion?
Yes, please. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I don't know which one of you would like to make this motion, but the motion will be to rescind the previous motion on this item and to adopt a new motion approving the item subject to the staff conditions.
Okay.
And the second?
Make a motion to rescind.
No. Okay, you're asking the commission to make that. Okay.
Yes, Commissioner
Okay.
Purvey can just say
Making
you
a
move
motion
us.
to rescind the previous motion concerning the preliminary plat and making the move to recommend the approval of the mayor and city council of a rezone for W Ranch based on staff's findings and conditions A as listed in the staff report.
I second.
Please vote.
We'll actually need to take a roll call vote on this one. Commissioner Keating?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Chapman. Chair Summers?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Purvey?
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yes votes, 1 absence.
And I can make this one very easy. It's the same PowerPoint. This is for the preliminary plat. I'd like to.
Okay, and I'm so fried at this point, I'm not sure which one we're doing. So,
We're doing number 3 now, I think.
I guess if we could just have, is there any comments among staff on this additional? Okay, none. Could I have a motion then, please?
I'll do it since I read it the first time. I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council of a preliminary plat for W Ranch based on staff's findings and conditions A through F as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Who do we vote on that, please?
I'm missing one vote.
Is mine the one that's not,
Oops. I don't know. Oops. I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
mine's lit up.
Oh, now it's there. Sorry. Motion passes 6 yes votes, 1 absence.
Any discussions on future agenda items? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.